Is it possible that we're entering a new golden age? Is it possible that we're entering a new sort of peak phase in cubing?
Now we're starting to see this element of almost, sports broadcast, like spectator events that we haven't really seen explored very much in the past.
The double whammy of Red Bull, a couple of years of Red Bull, and then the documentary. Every single Cube store was killing it back then. If executed properly by PSL and by Speedcubing TV, if we can get it popping and in front of people, get eyeballs on it. I wonder.
I find it hard to imagine PSL getting like the level of funding and the level of visibility that Red Bull had.
The next move is big sponsors outside of cubing with cash.
I loved how PSL has made like the most compelling case possible for 4-pad mode, and specifically for 4-pad mode not needing a database reset. People hate me for this. What makes the most sense is just if it's a +2, it's not solved. Cube's misaligned, it's not solved.
Speaking about sports, as we've got you here, I thought it would be fun to have a bit of a yap about PSL, which is, of course, presenting speedcubing as a sport. And it's happened now. So the lead up to PSL, there was a fair bit of like, bit of discussion around whether it was going to work, whether it was going to happen, whether it was going to be good for cubing or whatever. Some of that stuff we can't tell yet. We don't really know. But where were you, would you reckon, in the lead up to PSL? What was your vibe on it? You weren't full hater, not even slightly.
I was not full hater. I was a fan of the concept. I'm always a fan of like new formats for exploring cubing. I thought the Red Bull thing was cool. I thought, the SSL was really cool. I loved watching Monkey League. So I loved the idea of it, but I was a bit skeptical of some of the implementation things that I saw, particularly the financial side of things. I didn't really see how that was going to make much sense. And that side of things, I don't think my mind's changed that much on it from the first couple of events. I will say I was a little skeptical of, how exciting it would be. And it was very exciting. I don't know how much of that was representative of the format as a whole, or how much of that was specifically like Timon and Maddie and Dylan just happening to pop off in these first few events. But yeah, I was a little bit skeptical, but a fan of the concept. And yeah, let's go from there.
Yeah. So I think with the financials, you're probably right. I don't think it takes a financial genius to work out that they're probably losing money at the moment. And that's to be expected, I think, until it gains momentum and more people go and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously they opened it up for 64 people, but they didn't get 64 people in any of the brackets. But they got enough to put on a show. And the format itself, I think, just the chaotic nature of it. Like with what happened to... Did you watch the last one, the one at San Diego?
Yeah, watched both.
So
I didn't quite catch 100% of the San Diego broadcast, but like all the big moments.
Yeah. So Greiser, of course, had a bit of a rough time. And there was a bit of an upset there. It was... my memory's so bad, but it was Dylan Miller he went up against and got knocked out. Yeah. Which...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he got knocked down to the lower bracket by Dylan and then got knocked out by Brendan, was it?
That's right. It was Brendan. It was Brendan Dunnigan. Yeah. Okay, so great to see Brendan competing as well. He put on a good show. But yeah, those. Oh
yeah, he's cracked.
He is, hey. Those moments are made it really captivating for me. Like I kind of planted my flag fairly early on. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, bring it on. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to watch this. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
Interested to see where they go next. I like what it's kind of... Well, here's my question that I've been kind of pondering. Do you think, is it possible, and you've been in the game longer than I have. I started cubing like 2016, 17. You're way earlier than that, or?
2011.
2011. Okay, so you've seen... Oh yeah, Manu in the chat, shout out Varun. You've seen... things come and go in cubing. You've seen trends, you've seen generations and all that kind of stuff. Not to age you too much, but you know what I mean. You've seen...
I'm an old man in cubing.
You've seen peak Felix, you've seen peak Max, you're seeing peak Yiheng. Yeah. Is it possible that we're entering a new golden age? Is it possible that we're entering a new sort of peak phase in cubing, do you reckon? With PSL, Cubing Clash Cubing Clash is not a one-off. It's happening again. We'll talk about that in the show later on. Do you think it's possible that we're entering a new peak age of cubing, a new golden age?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the whole idea of a golden age is kind of a myth in the sense that if you look at the history of cubing, apart from like the COVID years when like a lot of stuff just wasn't happening, but generally speaking, year on year, it's gotten faster and more competitive and just more impressive. I mean, there have been like freak outliers like Felix, where like at his peak, obviously that was a specific exciting element that wasn't quite as present in like 2019 or something when he was being caught. But in terms of just like the growth of cubing and the broadcast and just like the level of competition, I think, it's gotten better every single year. And now we're starting to see this element of almost, sports broadcast, like spectator events that we haven't really seen explored very much in the past. And so I'm really excited to see how that progresses in the next few years. Yeah,
I think because when I talk, so for me, so golden age is subjective. For me, what the golden age was in recent years, from what I've seen, was when there was the sort of the double whammy of Red Bull, a couple of years of Red Bull, and then the documentary. Because every single cube store was killing it back then. We were all selling so many cubes because we became we were in the zeitgeist, as it were. It became something that was almost impossible to miss. Like everyone knew about it and it was happening. It's why I wax on and on and on and about how good Red Bull was. Despite all the technicalities of it, it put SpeedCube in front of so many people in a way that it hadn't been before. And I just wonder if executed properly by PSL and by Speedcubing TV, if we can get it popping and in front of people, get eyeballs on it, I wonder later this year or 2025, which year is it? 2026. I wonder if we could see another one of those coming.
Yeah, I find it hard to imagine the same sort of spike happening because I think there was a really unique combination of factors, right? It was Red Bull, but then it was also the Netflix documentary, and then I think the biggest thing was just everyone was at home with COVID.
There was that as
they were
well.
locked down for a while. They had nothing to do, and then as soon as comps came back, which was this huge spike, everything was filling up like faster than anyone could register.
Yeah.
And just the biggest competitions in the world were happening right about then.
Yeah.
And that's starting to tail off now, and suddenly maybe something like PSL could help with sort of bring back kind of what Red Bull brought. But I think it'd be very hard to recapture those other factors. And also, even with that, I find it hard to imagine PSL getting like the level of funding and the level of visibility that Red Bull had, because obviously they have orders of magnitude more resources to put into it.
Yeah.
Whereas PSL's starting like from the ground up, right? And so hopefully over time it can build into something really, really huge and really awesome. But we'll just have to see how that goes. And again, that ties back into my skepticism around the financials, where it's like, the first few events can lose money, but you do need to start making money at some point if you want to grow it, right?
Yeah. If I'm standing back and looking at it, so I'm not as much as I enjoy it, and I talk to Michael Chai every now and then about it, and I paid some money to be a sponsor on the broadcast and run some ads. I'm not technically involved. What they need, from my perspective, just standing looking at it as someone who enjoys watching it and someone who wants to see it succeed and wants to see Speedcubing grow, the next move is big sponsors outside of cubing. Yeah. With cash.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they need big title sponsors if they want to make it make sense. I don't think it's very sustainable as just a kind of grassroots thing where the money comes from registration fees and stuff.
You can't bootstrap it forever. No, that's not how a business works. You can bootstrap it for a year, but at some point it's got to make money. Otherwise, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And I think, honestly, on that financial side, I was already a bit skeptical, and the Berkeley comp especially, almost maybe more pessimistic on that respect, which sounds dire to say, but the fact that they were planning for a 64-person bracket in an area that, as far as I'm aware, regularly gets 100+ person comps, and they got 18 registrations?
18 registrations.
Pretty dire. I mean, I know that there were more people spectating as well who weren't competing.
Yeah, there were.
But still, that was actually worse than I expected. So yeah, hopefully it can grow. I mean, the first couple of events definitely put on a show and made a strong case for why it's an amazing spectator event, and definitely like the viewership numbers that surprised me.
They were
like
great.
the fact that the first one got like 700 viewers at peak, something like that.
First one peaked at famously peaked at 699, which is annoying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was surprised how many people were watching it. Yeah. Hopefully that online hype can translate to more in-person registrations over the next few months. But we'll just have to see. One thing that I will say, I loved how PSL has made like the most compelling case possible for 4-pad mode, and specifically for 4-pad mode not needing a database reset, because within 2 competitions we have 3 solves sub 3.5, and all 3 of them are faster than their solvers WCA PRs, right?
Yeah.
Dylan's is way faster.
Full step.
Dylan's is like 0.7, it's like 0.8 seconds faster, something like that. I think his PR is like 4.26.
4.2, yeah.
And he got a 3.49, so ridiculous. And so the fact that, and even if you discount singles, right, like Maddie and Dylan, not quite so much team on, but Maddie and Dylan were solving better in the PSL than they ever have in WCA competitions. Like, even if you looked at averages, they were briefly sub 5. They could have set sub 5 averages of 5, and they've never done that in WCA comps. So even with 4-pad mode, they were still at their very fastest. And so I think that's a pretty clear demonstration that it would not need a database reset. At least for 3x3. You know, for things like 2x2 or Pyraminx or Skube, it might be a slight different story. But for the main event, no, you wouldn't need a database to reset.
Yeah, I agree with you. Matty disagreed. He reckoned it would need a reset, which was weird because I find that quite confusing. Yeah. But
I found it so funny. Like, he comes off the back of his best performance ever. And he's like, no, I don't need a reset. I'm like, it just wouldn't though. Team on later in that stream, he had it right, I think, where he said like the records might slow down for a little bit in like some areas, but given like 6 months, people will just improve and beat the records. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, I thought that was a good case. I thought that was a good point and a good case. Dylan's in the chat reminding me, interesting tidbit, there was a lot of people who attended both Berkeley and San Diego who had never been to a WCA event. I found that when I spoke to the guys last week, I found that absolutely mind-blowing. That there were people there who it was their first competition, like the kid that went up against Timon in the first round. That was his first ever comp experience, which hopefully hasn't scarred him for life. Yeah.
Well, I think he'd just be excited at that point. Like, if he knows, I think if he's registering for this, he probably knows who Timon is, and he probably knew exactly how that was going to go down. And I mean, that's going to be so exciting, like competing against Timon Goloshinsky, your very first competition.
Yeah.
Like, if I turned up to my first comp and Felix was there going head to head with me, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty good outcome. Hey. I was sort of weighing that up in my mind and just kind of going, despite everything, this has given us an incredible platform to just play with the regs and actually solve a few hypotheticals that we're talking about. And so testing out 2 major things that I can think of, testing out 4-pad mode and testing out the M slice plus 2. Do you have thoughts on that, by the way? What do you think about the M slice plus 2?
I don't have strong thoughts. I've seen arguments for and against it. I think actually what makes the most sense, which people hate me for this, what makes the most sense is just, if it's a plus 2, it's not solved. Like the cube's misaligned, it's not solved. I think objectively speaking, if we're looking at a solved versus unsolved puzzle, that makes the most sense. And so then M slice would be a DNF as well. But I think in practical terms, like M slice being a plus 2 is fine. I don't really care one way or the other, to be honest.
I mean, it would be, because sometimes I'm like, maybe just because you could just bypass plus 2, like in clock. Just be like, well,
it's just a DNF.
Is it solved? Yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of like the practical repercussions, like having M slice being a plus 2, or just any slice move being a plus 2, promotes method diversity. Like, it makes room more viable, which I think is a good thing.
I think that's
good. CFOP having a monopoly isn't good for anything, even as a CFOP solver, or ZB solver now, I guess, but it's kind of the same thing.
Careful. Careful. I've been chewed for that.
Well, okay. Technically speaking, I'm not a CFOP solver anymore, at least with my home practice.
Yeah.
Because I know full ZB. But yeah, that's irrelevant to the discussion.
I've just had a message on Discord from someone who I'm not going to name, but someone who is involved, who is staff on WCA, just saying you may be onto something about playing with the regs, winky face. And it's like, oh, okay, it's WCA watching PSL. That's interesting.
Yeah,
it
is cool.
I'm not going to name them.
Yeah, it's also cool to have the PSL as kind of a low stakes way to do that, but also it seems to be their attitude that they're willing to play with stuff like this, that they're saying, well, the regs might not be exactly the same from one event to the next. We'll just, we'll develop it and see what works.